Chris from MyStampLady.com, and I'm here with this Glimmery cardstock with the trees that's made with Glimmer cardstock colored with the Stampin' Blends and the Carols of Christmas bundle. So that's the bundle I'm using here. You see the stamp set and the coordinating dies. I will be using the stitch shape framelits and the layering squares dies and the holly embossing folder for my background. Okay, so I am starting off with my background, the one that will be stamped with the ornaments and then embossed with the holly embossing folder. I'm going to stamp these ornaments in green, and I'm primarily stamping them just to get the strings. So I will be ending up covering all of the little ornament bulbs with red glimmer paper that has been die cut. But I'm going to stamp these because I want the green strings. So I have one that's at the top of the paper, one that's further down, and I will need to make my strings longer on the ornaments that are further down. So I took a straight edge and the garden green marker. I'm using the bullet end, and I'm extending those ornament lines or the ornament strings so they don't look like they're hanging from the middle of anywhere. And I go ahead and do that for all three of those ornaments on the right hand side. You need to do this before you emboss your cardstock, because otherwise you'll be trying to do this over bumpy cardstock. So they're extended in the holly embossing folder, and I'll run this through the Big Shot to get that embossed piece there for the Whisper White cardstock. Okay, and there it is, all embossed. The pattern is beautiful, and there's my ornaments, and it's ready to go on to the next step. So I have a piece of Dazzling Diamonds glimmer paper, and that's what I'm going to use to cut the trees. I flipped it over to cut from the back side because I feel like the dies cut a little bit better if you're cutting that plastic back. Doing the same thing with red glimmer paper and the two ornament sets. So I have two sets of ornaments and the two sets of trees, or the single tree and the double tree, and I ran those through a couple of times so that I could get a nice cut back on those. So these are the Dazzling Diamond trees, and if you want white trees, just leave them like this, but I wanted green. So I pulled in my Old Olive dark Stampin' Blends marker. The Stampin' Blends are the new alcohol markers. I love using these to color things in because they give you a nice permanent color. And I'm going really softly over this because the glimmer paper can kind of tear up the the tip of your marker. So I'm just doing it really softly, trying to make sure that I keep that just really gentle. You may want one specific marker for doing your blending and your coloring in of designs, and one for coloring in rough things like this glimmer paper. But I will not stop doing this with my blends, even if I have to buy a separate marker. So I've moved on to Deck the Halls, and this is kind of a rectangle size, and I have square dies. So I've stamped it once on my Whisper White cardstock. I'm putting this on my magnetic platform on an acrylic plate. And I put that die towards the bottom so that my sentiment's towards the bottom of that die, and you'll see there's a little white space at the top. I also cut out one of the scalloped rectangle squares for the mat. Okay, I moved that die down so I can remove that extra white space at the top of my stamped piece. And then I'm going to take that scalloped square that I stamped or cut and then see how much of it I want to cut off. And I've decided to cut off about 2 of the top scallops. And instead of risking sliding my paper over, I have put my scalloped die face up, or the cutting side up. I've placed in my paper that I've already cut once so that I can cut off 2 of the scallops. And I decided I really don't want this to move as it's going through, so I took some Post-it tape or Post-it paper, the tape part of it, and went over that edge there to hold it in place. So I've run it through. We're just removing my Post-it paper here, the sticky part of it, and you'll see I now have a nice scalloped background or matte piece to put my stamped sentiment piece on, and it lines up really nicely. So you just have to cut it once, move your dies, move the paper on the dies, and run it through the Big Shot again to get that trimmed shape that you need. And now I have some nicely cut rectangles from my square dies. Okay, I'm going to set that aside, and I'm pulling back in my background, and with mini glue dots I'm going to take and glue all of those little die cut red pieces over the coordinating or corresponding ornaments. So I have my green strings that I did at the beginning. I have the die cut red glimmer paper to go over because I want glimmery solid red ornaments for this piece. So I proceed to go ahead and do that for all of those ornaments. And then the next part is to put those trees in. I'm deciding where I want my sentiment piece, so I'm kind of setting that down, placing that where it's going to sit. And I'm going to take the two trees, the double set of trees, and just put my fast fuse on the back of that and glue that down so that it is behind that sentiment piece. And then I have that third tree that I'll pop up with dimensionals after I get down my other pieces. Fast fuse down this sentiment piece. The fast fuse is a nice sticky glue or adhesive, so it's going to really hold this down, because sometimes it can be kind of tricky to adhere stuff to over that glimmer paper. It doesn't like to hold much down, but this fast fuse will be held on really nicely, will hold that sentiment on even in the other areas. Okay, I have my red ribbon. I'm going to wrap that around and tie a bow to the left side. To help me get that bow positioned in the right spot, I just took a mini glue dot and put it underneath the knot. And then I made two loops, or two bows, the two bow loops, and I actually tied those around themselves. So I just made the loops, tied the loops around each other when I put this bow together. Bows take me a little bit of time because I'm kind of fussy about them. I like them to look nice, so I kind of pull and retie and make them tighter and play with them a little bit. So I did cut that part out because I didn't want to make you watch me adjust my bow. And it didn't take super long, but it took a little bit longer than I thought you would want to watch. But you can see there I'm just wrapping the two loops around each other, and you get a nice bow that way. So just adjusting those tails. And that mini glue dot underneath the knot helps to hold that in place. Okay, so there is my bow piece. I am putting some adhesive down on my real red cardstock base, and then just going to place this entire piece right onto that card front. The embossing doesn't show up very well in the video, but it really adds a lot to have that whisper white background piece embossed. It just makes it, adds a little bit of texture to it. Let's trim off those tails a little bit more. And then I've taken my last tree. I have some of the mini dimensionals that I'm putting on the back. And so that will pop that last tree up just a little bit above the other trees. And I did go over my ribbon. I did that on purpose. I kind of like that look of the ribbon going back behind it, behind the main tree and then across the front. Okay, if you have any questions about what I've done, don't hesitate to contact me to see that glimmery tree that you can get. And then I have the ornaments that are done in the red. I had a lot of fun putting this card together. If you have any questions, contact me at chris@mystamplady.com. The supplies are available in my online store, shopwithmystamplady.com. Printable directions on my blog, mystamplady.com. And I hope you're inspired with this card, and we'll go out and use some glimmer paper with some of the Stampin' Blends. Thanks for watching.